In this video, we're going to go over the process of adding a transaction into HomeHub Pro. Adding a transaction is the heart of the transaction management engine, and so we're going to spend some time getting you familiar with the process. First thing you'll want to do is go to homehubpro.com and then log in. On the left-hand side, you will see a menu, dashboard, clients, vendors, and then transactions. If you press on the transactions button, it will take you to the screen where all of your transactions exist. To add a new transaction, what you will do is simply go over to the right of the search bar and hit the Add Transaction button. When you hit Transaction, there will be a wizard that pops up, and it will guide you through the process of adding a transaction. So the first question is there a co-agent? If there is, you can simply select them here or add them. Since most transactions don't have a co-agent, we'll skip through that part. The next piece, and very important, is how do you add a client? If you have already submitted your database to us, we will upload it for free into your profile, and they'll show up in here. So then you can simply select any client that you have in our database, and then you'll be ready to move on to the next step. However, if you haven't uploaded your database, or if this is a new client, what you will want to do is go to the plus button, which is over here to the right. You will press the plus button and it will open up a pop-up that will allow you to add the new client. I highly suggest you fill in as much information as you can, because this will allow you to be more relevant in your communication in the future, as well as during the transaction. So to add a client, you will simply add their first name, their last name, their phone number, and their email address. The phone number is not required. However, the email address is if you want to communicate with them through the transaction. So you will put in an email address, and then the next thing you can do is select tags. And by tagging people, it allows you to bifurcate your CRM and basically dissect it in a way that allows you to communicate relevantly with your clients. So in this case, you can just select their buyer, just start typing to see if a tag already exists. So this may be a buyer lead for you and just adding them in. Or you may want to create your own custom tags, in which case you can just say, just type in any tag by hitting the plus button here on the right, and you can create any tag you want that's relevant to you. So it can be custom, and then you can just add the tag. If you hit add tag, it'll show up in your future tag selection list. If you have a VIP, or if you want to create a VIP 1, VIP 2, you can do that as well. So we're going to exit out of here. And the other important thing to note is you can add their spouse information as well. If they're married, have a partner, you can hit the plus button and it'll open up an option for you to go through the same process. I would highly recommend, if both parties are part of the transaction, to add the spouse and their email address, and that will allow you to easily communicate with them throughout the transaction, and also give them access to Easy Home Hub. One thing to note here is you have add and send invite email as an option. If you do this, what this will do is send them an invitation to join Easy Home Hub. And Easy Home Hub is the client counterpart to HomeHub Pro. It mirrors your HomeHub Pro account for that client, and it will allow them to see any documents you upload that you share with them. It will also have timelines specific for clients on this transaction, and allow them to have benefits and features post-closing that will keep you top of mind. Highly suggest that you add and send this invite email to them and give them an opportunity to experience Easy Home Hub. You do have the option to add without an email. So you can simply go through the transaction, add them without the email, and if you choose to add them later, you can. You have the option to send an invitation email and invite them to join Easy Home Hub later. So either way is fine as long as you do invite them at some point to join the platform. It will be in your best interest. I'm going to exit out of here. I'm going to select a client. Let's use Charlie, Casper, and Cheryl's spouse. If your client is in the database and they have previous properties that you have included, you can simply select any property that they own in the system. And then if they're selling it, you can just simply select it. If, however, they're purchasing a property that is new and is not part of their ownership platform now, you can simply add the property by going over to the plus button here on the right. When you hit the plus button, you'll see a pop-up that asks for the house number and zip code. Simply go to your mutual acceptance and add the house number and the zip code. And then hit search property. When you hit search property, the system will search for all properties that are known in the database, and you will simply select the appropriate property from the list. In this case, it's 4th Avenue Northwest, so we will select that. And then here, it will populate. This MLS number is not correct. It is actually uploaded from Zillow. So in the future, you will be allowed to input your MLS, your NWMLS number. Here you can change the price if that's not the correct price. This imports the Zestimate from Zillow. So you can simply change it to whatever price is on the purchase and sale agreement. And in this case, we haven't noted a price, so we'll make one up. So it's $150,000. So when you add the property, it will update the system and then associate this property with your client in the future. However, if, for example, this is new construction, or if it's a condominium, and it doesn't show up with the right unit number, you can simply assume, let's exit out of here, we'll try this again, hit the plus button, select a property, and let's say it's new construction. If you know it's not going to be in any database, you can simply type in 0, 0, search property, and what that will do is allow you to add the property manually. Then you can simply hit the Add Property Manually button, and it will just simply ask you for the house number and the city, state, zip code, price, and then you can save it. It's easy to add it. So if there's a condominium and the unit number isn't populating, you can do the same thing, just hit 0, 0, and then add in the property manually. So for right now, I'm going to cancel this, and I'm going to assume that we're just going to be buying this property. And here, the next question you'll find is the transaction type. Is it a buy, sell, listing, or lease? Simple question, choose which type of transaction it is. Residency type, is it primary, investment, or second home? You're going to select that, and the reason we ask this question is because if you tag them investment home, then we'll tag them as an investor automatically for you so that you can send them information that you feel would only be relevant to investors and not to other people that may not be interested in it. So the next question will be, is it what type of home is it, or what time of purchase is it? And so in this case, we'll use it as a single family. And then we're going to ask a few more questions. Is property on the well? Yes or no. Septic? Yes or no. Or was it built before 78? The reason we ask these questions is if you hit yes to any one of the questions, the system will automatically recognize certain forms and documents that will be required as part of the transaction. And it will also allow you to communicate with them certain maintenance things in the future as a benefit to staying top of mind. We will be sending maintenance reminders to people who own septic on your behalf about pumping the septic maintenance, etc. So it's very important you answer these questions from a compliance perspective, but also as a way to stay in touch with them in the future. So here, if the purchase price is correct, you can put that in. If it's not, you can change it here as well. Let's assume the purchase price is $250,000. Here you can put commission if you want to track that. If you want to put in any transaction coordinator fees or listing coordination fees, which typically you wouldn't, because if you were paying any of this, they would be inputting it for you. So let's assume today is the mutual acceptance date. So you would simply put mutual acceptance date. Then you would simply say, okay, what is the closing date? Let's assume that it is now going to close on December 4th. And the possession date will automatically default to the closing date. If it is different, it's important that you change the possession date. And then there will be certain tasks and best practices that are a function of possession date. So it's important this is correct. And then the closing date also has some tasks and best practices that are driven off this date. So it's important you input this correctly. What you'll do is hit the next button, or you can save it as a draft at this point. If you choose to save it as a draft, it will save it in your transaction profile as a draft, and you can start back up at the wizard with all the information saved. So if you're busy on time, you can save it as a draft. If not, we'll continue on to next. Here is the heart of the communication platform. So this section is where you would input all of the stakeholders and participants in the transaction. So if you are, now you can choose to skip this. What's important to note is none of this is mandatory. If you choose next, you cannot come back and add the listing agent, title company, or seller information. You will be able to add the lender and the closing agent in the future through the edit function, but not the others. I highly recommend you take the 2 minutes it'll require to complete this so that in the future it will be easier for you to manage the transaction. So let's, first thing you would do for the lender is you would start typing in their name. If they're already in the database, and to get in the database, it simply would have been input by any user in the HomeHub Pro platform. To do that, if they're already there, you can simply select the lender. If they are not, what you will do is hit the plus button, which is over here on the right side. So let's assume you want to add a lender. Please input their first name, their last name, and the company they work for is important. So we would put just their company name, their phone number, email address is required in order to include them as part of the transaction and the platform. If you add their email address, what will happen is you have the option to send the invitation. And by doing that, all they will be receiving is an email that asks them to verify whether the information that you have input for them is accurate. There is no action necessary on their part. They do not have to join the platform. It is basically an information verification piece so that all of our data has integrity. So when people select Larry in the future, the information that's pre-populating is accurate. So please input this and send an invitation so that they can verify. If for some reason you do not have an email address for them, you can skip this process for now. Now, let's assume Larry is, we had already selected them in the past, so we'll just go ahead and assume it's selected. The same exact process works for the closing agent. So just start typing their name. If they are already in the system, select them. If they are not, you can simply add them into the system by pressing the plus button and going through the exact same process as with lending. Now I'm going to hit the X button and exit out. We've already chosen Claudia Closer. And then we're going to go through the same process with the listing agent. So let's assume that the listing agent is already in the system. Again, if they're not, you can simply add them by going through the same process, adding the plus button here. If the agent already has an office associated within the HomeHub Pro platform or is a member, you can simply, it will automatically populate their compliance email here. If it isn't, you can add them later in the process. And then the title company, we've uploaded all the popular title companies and the most robust, and you can simply choose who it is, select it, and if they're not in there, you can always add them with the plus button. With sellers, none of this is mandatory. You can just add them in with the first name and last name. Phone number and email address is not necessary. You will not be adding these people into the database. It's simply for your own tracking. So if you do not choose to enter them, it's your prerogative. If your office requires you to enter them for their own compliance and tracking, then simply add their first and last names, and you can add them to the transaction. So let's assume the seller is related, is Jenny Doe, and so we're going to add them, and they'll appear here now. So again, you have the option to save as a draft. You can go back to the previous screen of the wizard. If you do that, it won't save information here unless you have saved it. Now, if you are running out of time, save it as a draft, or we will continue on and hit next. And this is a very critical part where you're going to check all of the contingencies that you want to be tracking throughout the transaction. So, for example, if there is a financing contingency, you simply check financing contingency, and you can adjust the days. If it's a 30-day, which it will default to all the default days in the NWMLS as it is. If it's any different, then you would basically choose to change it. The system is smart and programmed with NWMLS rules. So if it's 20 days, it will move forward 20 calendar days to the 22nd as the expiration of your financing contingency. You can also adjust it specifically by changing the date on the calendar. If there's a specific date that you're aware of, you can just simply select the date here. So when I say you are going to select the ones you want to keep track of, then, for example, utilities is typically included in most contracts. If you select the utilities addendum, then it will send you reminders about obtaining a completed utilities addendum. If, however, you have already gotten the information completed as part of the mutual agreement, then you don't have to select this. This is not a forms field. It's simply what contingencies do you want to be tracked throughout the transaction and be reminded of with our easy tasks and our smart transaction management platform. So if you select those, the ones that you want to track, then the other thing you're able to do is simply add a custom contingency. So what that means is if there is something unique to this contract, you can simply hit add custom contingency and specify it here. So earnest money to be wired within 24 hours. So what you want to do is say, okay, is that based on agreement date? Is it off of closing date or possession date? Let's assume it's agreement date. And you're going to say, hey, I need to follow up on this one day after because the buyer or we have to wire this in within 24 hours. So now you can actually assign it to yourself to follow up on, the client to follow up on, or transaction coordinator office user. You can also say, hey, is it only for this transaction? And something like this would probably be transaction specific. So if you select this, it'll remind you of this function for this transaction only. You can also select for all future transactions, and then whatever task you have created here or contingency will show up for all future transactions, and you can simply check on the box. So for example, if you buy gift card for every client and you buy it 5 days before closing, you can say buy gift card before closing. So on closing date, 5 days before, and then you can assign it to yourself. And you can say for all future transactions, and then every transaction that you have that's a buy transaction will show this as an option under custom contingency. And instead of creating a new one, you can simply select it in the future. So let's assume that this is by gift card and we're going to make it for this transaction. Then we'll add it and you will see that by gift card will show up as something to do 5 days before closing. Once you have identified the things you want the smart system to be reminding you of, then you can hit next. And now you get to the document and forms part for office compliance. To add a document, what you will do is go to the Add Document Now button in the middle of the pop-up screen. You will press Add Document Now, and it will create or open up a new pop-up. And here, the first thing you'll do is title the document. Let's say you want to upload mutual acceptance. Type that in. Then what you will do is go to Upload Document or Image. You will press this. It will take you to your list of files on your laptop or PC. And then you can simply select whatever document you choose to upload. In this case, it's the mutual acceptance for this transaction. So when you select it, double click on the document and it will show up here. Once you double clicked on the PDF in the open file, you will now go and let the system and your office know what are the forms that are included in this document. So in order to do that, we have created 3 different categories. One, to make it easy, are all of the most common NWMLS forms. And to access it, you simply go and hit the arrow button here, and it will expand the view of all the forms. If you want to hide and collapse the view, you press on that arrow again, and you'll be back to the 3 categories. So now what we're going to do is say, okay, I'm going to open up and expand the screen by hitting this arrow. And now I'm going to select all the documents that are in this PDF. In most cases, mutual acceptance has multiple documents. So what we'll do in the best practices is simply go through the document, say, okay, there's a Form 21, so I'm going to select that. Then I'm going to scroll through and see what other forms are here. So it looks like there is a financing addendum included. So I'm going to select financing. And so you'll repeat the process, go through the entire document, and select all the different forms that are included as part of this PDF. So let's assume the utilities is there. And now once you have selected the forms that are available under common MLS forms, what you'll do is take the scroll bar, which is right here on the right, and you will drag it up to the top. And then you will go to Common MLS Forms, you will collapse the view, and then see if there are any other forms that are in the document that are not under Common MLS Forms. So if you go to Office Forms and hit the arrow, it will expand that view. And if there are any specific forms that your office requires, it will show up here. The other items that will show up under Office Forms are things that are not contract related, but required as part of a transaction. So for example, a commission disbursement form, the legal description. And let's assume that part of mutual, you will have this, so you can select that as well. And you probably don't have an earnest money receipt as part of mutual acceptance, but you may have included a law of agency pamphlet if that's required by your office, and final settlement statement will come later. So again, you would go back to the scroll bar, scroll back up, and then you can hit the arrow. It will collapse the screen. Now, if there's any additional forms that are not listed up here but part of the contract, you can simply expand the other MLS forms and it'll have a comprehensive list of every other form available on the NWMLS. So now let's assume you have all of the contract documents. You would simply hit the Add Document button and you'll see that every form that you have selected is over here, and your office will easily be able to see it. Now, if, for example, you forgot to check a form or you accidentally checked a form, you can always edit the forms simply by going to the pencil icon, which represents edit. And if you select that, it will open this up again, and then you can expand, collapse, and do the same process. You can uncheck things if you want. Let's just say this wasn't in here, so you can edit it and then go back, hit Add Document. If, for example, you uploaded the wrong document, you have the opportunity to delete it right now. Assuming everything is correct, you can hit the next button, or you can add another document. So let's say you had another document that you wanted to add. You would go through the same process. And let's say it's a pre-approval letter. And then you would simply, since it's not a form, you can just leave it. You don't have to select any forms. And you can just add the document since it's not a contract form. If your office requires it, it may be listed here, so you may want to double check to see if pre-approval letters are required. If they're not, then you can simply go scroll back up, collapse the form, add this document, and now you can see it's labeled, but there's no forms underneath it because it's not something that's required. Now here, you can see if you accidentally did not upload a PDF, there'll be a blank here. So what you'll want to do is go back into the Edit button, and you'll want to add the document. So we'll go back, we'll delete this, and then we're going to add another document here. And then this time, we'll do it properly. We'll do pre-approval letter for Wells Fargo. We will upload the document or image. We will select another document. And then again, since it's not a form, you can simply add document. Remember, selecting forms is not mandatory if there is no form. You can add document, and now you'll see, since I uploaded the document, it appears. Again, you can edit or delete. Once you have uploaded all the documents that you would want for the transaction, you would hit the next button by going down here and pressing it. Now, all the work you've put in earlier is going to pay off. So now what you will do is simply select all the people that are in the transaction that you want to send this document to. What's wonderful about the HomeHub Pro system is that the system will automatically create tailored emails for the client at the end of a transaction that shows them their responsibilities, plus sends them copies of the documents. It will also create a specific email for each of the other parties that has all of the contact information plus the documents and outlines the buyers and sellers and introduces them to the transaction so they can open up escrow, start the loan process, and all you have to do is select the folks that you want to send it to. So you'll probably send it to the lender, you'll send it to the closing agent, you want to send it to your office, which will be pre-populated in the system already, and then you may want to send it to the other agent to let them know that you've already opened escrow, since they'll be copied on it. And here, under Add Other Emails, you can add anybody else that you want, and they will appear in all future document ads right up here for this transaction. So then in the future, you'll be able to simply select them as someone as part of the transaction. So to add someone, all you have to do is first take your cursor down here to emails, click here, and then simply type any email that you would like. A lot of escrow companies have team emails. So let's just type in team escrow. And let's say you will want to send documents to them in the future. So once you type in their email address, you will hit the comma button. And when you hit the comma button, you'll see it's highlighted in blue, which means it's been added to the system. Then you can add any other emails. So let's say the lender has an assistant. You can put their email and then hit the comma button again. And you can add as many people as you want down here. And once you add them, again, they will show up in this transaction as someone that you can simply checkbox and email them in the future. So once you are certain that you have been able to select everyone you want to send this to, you will use the scroll bar here on the right. You will scroll down and you will hit the Add Transaction button. And you are now done with adding a transaction on HomeHub Pro. Thank you for watching, and feel free to call us if you ever have any questions on the process.